that all the buildings are connected, but with this brown, light brown color, you can see the possible places where district heating can be connected. And in general, Riga City consumes about 60% of total energy consumption for production of heat and heat supply and consumption. So we are very northern European city, and our average degree days are 3,600 degree days. In average, it's about 200 heating days with outdoor temperature 0 to 1.1 degrees Celsius. So we have been the first Latvian municipality to sign the Covenant of Mayors, and later on developed a Sustainable Energy Action Plan, and it finished in 2020. So now we are also developing new Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan, and this is the part where climate also comes into the game, and where we look wider on our energy systems and city planning in general, where we will assess not only energy systems, but also waste, parks, green zones, and we will try to implement other sectors which are related more to the climate and adaptation of the climate, and also mitigation activities. So, and if you look more in detail about Riga city, so we see that one of our biggest energy and also emission contributors is transport sector, and it consists in general of 46.5% of total emissions in Riga city. And what you can see in this graph, this is calculated emissions in Riga city, divided in different types of emission by production type, and you can see that most of the emissions are produced by vehicles registered in Riga city, and it consists of approximately 77%. Public transport, although it is very well achieved and it's very available in all of the city, most of the public transport is using electricity or zero emission fuel. Therefore, the emissions from the public transport sector is quite low. But another sector, if we talk about transport, is inbound transport from suburbs, and this is another thing that we will need to overcome if we will move towards the climate neutrality. Electricity sector in Riga city, this is consists only 16.7% of the total emissions. As you can see, the average emission factor in Latvia in general is quite low. It is because we have high capacity hydroelectric stations, and we do not use coal or other dirty fossil fuels. But our second most used fuel for generating electricity is natural gas, and I will explain a little bit more in the challenges sector. So another sector in heat supply, this is district heating, as I mentioned before. In district heating, in total, 32% was produced with wood chips, which is renewable energy sources, and another 68% are produced with natural gas. And this is the same natural gas thermoelectric station which is producing electricity to the country in general. And this is one of the challenges, how we transit from natural gas to wood chips or to other renewable sources, at the same time producing electricity, and that our power is available always there. So, and if we look on the city from 2010 to 2020, we see that we have achieved 44% of emission reduction, and most of the reduction is made by renewable energy sources in district heating sector. But in the same time, we do not see any reduction in energy consumption. And as you can see in this graph, energy consumption in Riga city from 2010 to 2020 haven't decreased, but the most part of the energy consumption still is accounted for households, and this is one of the sectors which we need to refurbish, which we need to renovate and decrease energy consumption in this sector. So this is one of the challenges which I will mention in the next slides. Other sectors, municipality buildings are quite low in total share of energy consumption, and most of the buildings have been renovated, and this is quite easy to work with them as there's only one decision maker, and these projects can be carried out more easy. In the same time, commercial sector also contributes to some part of the energy consumption, but also this is not a very big share in the total energy consumption. Another sector in heating, this is decentralized heating, where buildings are not connected to the district heating, but they use their own local or individual heat sources. And this is very good that in this sector we have also decreased total emissions, but in the same time the energy consumption in the last years is approximately in the same level. Has been decreased a little bit in the 2018, 19 and 20, but most of this sector is related also to commercial buildings, and therefore this can be accounted because of the global pandemic in 2020, and this was one of the same reasons for transport decrease in the beginning of one of the first slides. But our major challenge in the decentralized heating is how we can connect these buildings to the centralized heating, and also the use of the natural gas and even some small parts of the coal or other fossil fuels. And another big problem is that wood chips or other biomass or renewables, this sector is used with very low efficiency and contributes to biggest share of the other emissions in the city, as for example nitric oxide, particulate matter, and other emissions. So, and if you look all together on the city in the scale of CO2 emissions, so we can see that from 2010 to 2020, there has been a small reduction in total CO2 emissions, but in general, we are still a long way to go to achieve climate neutrality. And as I mentioned in the first slide, the transport sector is the sector which contributes the most of the emissions. Then heating is the second one, together district heating with decentralized heating, and electricity is about 17 to 16% of the total emissions. So, and our target as mayor, our mayor has signed Paris Declaration, and Riga aims to be one of the top 100 cities in Europe to achieve climate neutrality. So we understand that these are major ambitions, and the goal is very challenging. But in the same time, we are very proud that our city mayor is aiming high, and we are looking for solutions how to achieve these goals. We understand that some of the solutions are still not invented or not in place, but therefore we're also looking on students like you or some bright minds with which can help us also to develop solutions and maybe some activities or policy to achieve these goals. And in the same time, as I mentioned, now we're developing sustainable energy and climate action plan. And what we aim to achieve this climate neutrality, but in the municipality sector. So basically in 2030, we as a municipality aim to be climate neutral. So this means that in 2030, we will purchase only electricity which is produced from renewable sources, and also we will produce electricity with solar panels and other things on site in our buildings. So we hope to renovate and refurbish our own municipality buildings, and then we hope to replace existing conventional vehicles to electrical or other emission-free transports, and even to reduce transport amount, and to purchase only renewable heat. So this is what we as a municipality aim. Of course, this doesn't mean that our city in total is climate neutral, but we as a municipality would like to show the example for private sector and commercial sector that we can achieve these goals. And as I mentioned, we see three biggest challenges. One of the challenges is transport sector, which contributes for the most of the emissions. Then our housing sector. So we still need to renovate about 6,000 buildings, and the renovation rate is very low, and we need some kind of new solutions how to talk with people and how to convince them to renovate these buildings and to refurbish their own building stock. And in the same time, one of our challenges is to achieve zero emission in heat supply. So, and a little bit more in detail about these challenges. So we see that in Riga city in general, we have very low car ownership. And if we compare even to European and other cities and countries, so we see that this ownership rate can increase even to 2030 and even more. So, and because of this, it is projected that the total emissions will increase. And as we see that only in 2020 there was a reduction rate in emissions because of the global pandemic, but when the pandemic will be over, or when the restrictions will be over, we project that the emissions will be back. So this is one of the most challenging sectors what we need to assess when we are moving towards the climate neutrality. And the second challenge was renovation of our buildings. We see that if in Riga, it is estimated that about 6,000 buildings needs to be renovated, and during the last planning period, only 46 buildings were complexly, deeply renovated. And most of the biggest issue is the decision-making process that the homeowners cannot decide and cannot form a homeowners association and decide on these things. And another thing is that heat tariff in Riga city is quite low, and there's no rentability for energy efficiency projects. Renovation of the building usually pay back about 40 to 60 years if we account only savings of the heat energy. Of course, there are other gains like better indoor climate, raise of the home value, and so on and so on. But people see only these direct savings, and this is one of the things which we need to assess and think how to increase the rentability of energy efficiency projects. And if you look on the district heating and heating in general, so one of the challenges is how we can connect buildings to the district heating system, because those who are not connected are using fossil fuels as natural gas or renewables, but with very low efficiency in different kind of boilers or even kilns. And in this picture, you can see city center, and the buildings in the red are most of them located in the district heating zone, but are not connected to the district heating system. And these numbers represent the existing situation. And this is one of the issues which we need to assess moving towards the climate neutrality to achieve our results, and also to improve the air quality, to reduce the smog and other effects. And like the final challenge is how we, as Riga city, which is one of the biggest, which is like center of the country, how we can manage the country electrical production with the district heating. As I told you, that we have 2 natural gas cogeneration plants, which produce most of the very big part of the electricity needed for city, but in the same time, this is quite expensive, and the heat is produced from natural gas, which is fossil fuel. And on the other hand, we have 45 boiler houses, most of them moving towards using of wood chips, and which is cheaper and renewable sources, but they are taking away the load from these cogeneration plants, and therefore the price of electricity also increased. So, and this is where we need to have this transition plan, how we how we move from these 2 very high power natural gas production plants to renewables. So I think this was from my side. So I will give the floor to my colleague Nika, who will explain how we are what we are practically doing to move towards the climate neutrality. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jānis, for giving this introduction. Yeah, so now the screen is free for sharing, and my presentation is opening, as you can see it. So let's do it. Just a second. Okay, it looks good. So Jānis gave us an introduction how well about the city of Riga, about our key goals and our key challenges, and I will go deeper in the practical steps. So how in practice we are taking our city towards neutrality, and here a very important role is to our international collaboration projects, because such projects are probably the best framework for developing, testing and deploying innovations, and standardizing them and making them as our daily practices, because it's very difficult actually for a public sector institution to get own financing for testing and for deploying innovations, as this is a public sector money, and what if not everything will go smooth, and etc. So there are always a lot of questions. So therefore EU funded projects are an excellent framework for a real deployment of those innovations and testing them in real urban environment. And this is what I'm going to highlight to you now in the next slides. So that's the background, but you are very well aware of, that the climate change is actually becoming really an existential threat to the Europe as well as the rest of the world. And therefore, Europe has adopted new policies, and a part of those policies, there are EU funding programs that support green development of the cities in Europe and beyond its borders. So then what is the Riga's way? So how we are taking this leading position in our way to the climate neutrality? So first of all, we are investigating those environmentally friendly technologies in different sectors. What is very important that the municipality can only work in those sectors in which the municipality can really influence the issues. So this is a local planning level, and that needs to be taken into consideration. So as the municipality, we have quite a lot of projects promoting cleaner urban transportation, both in private sector and in public sector. We are decarbonizing energy sector, as you have heard in Jānis' presentation. We are ensuring energy efficient buildings, so step by step, but we are doing our work, and this is probably the second largest challenge, or even the first, so the transportation and the buildings, what we need to deal with. And of course, this is all done in international partnerships to exchange an experience and to learn from the best European practices, and also sometimes learn from not that good practices, what is also very important. So this exchange is really crucial. And we couldn't do it without our international partners. So international collaboration for us is a must. And you can see here a lot of logos, which you know very well. So the city of Riga is really active in those networks. And yeah, I can say that we are actually active in all of them. And as our main collaboration partners, I would name DEICLE, I would name Energy Cities, Covenant of Mayors. And actually, know also the European Climate Kick program is becoming very important for us. Today, the city of Riga is going to submit 2 collaboration programs, hopefully to get funding, 2 collaboration projects to hope to get funding from that program. So this is an aspect that I wanted to mention here as well. But all right, so here you can see the different logos of our projects. So over the last couple of years, we have implemented over 20 different, or are implementing currently over 20 different EU-funded projects, and I will briefly mention the main of them. So as it was stated already, so really the transport is the main polluter with CO2 emissions currently, so even higher than the heat production in our city. So we need good strategies as well as we need action. And so what we as a city are doing, so we are promoting multimodality. And idea behind this is that we are convincing our citizens to sit from those comfortable but environmental polluting private cars to more sustainable means of transportation, such as cycling, such as our public transportation, which you already learned is comparatively green and mainly based on the electric power-driven vehicles. We also promote walking, as I said, and we promote e-mobility and zero-emission vehicles in the fleet of the municipal fleet as well as in private fleets. And another aspect that I will highlight later are those nature-based solutions in transport infrastructure that help us to mitigate the climate impacts in our city. So just a few words on the cycling development strategy for the city of Riga. Yes, cycling is becoming more and more important, and it's definitely prioritized in the city. And if you see at those pictures, you see that in Riga, we do not have only summer. We have rather harsh winters, and cycling in the winter is really a challenge. But today, if you will have a chance to, of course, those who are present in Riga, if you will have a chance to walk through Riga streets, you will see that actually the whole Riga city center this summer is a big experiment. So we are piloting a new street designs in the center of the city of Riga, giving priority to those people who are cycling and walking, and trying to reduce the number of cars on our streets, and also to reduce the speed of cars traveling in the city center. And as one of the actions, how you can in fact promote multimodality, this is the mobility point. So what is the mobility point? I will leave this presentation with you as soon as I finish, so I'm not going to read the definitions, but basically the mobility point you can see here in the picture is the point where you can exchange, you can go from the public transportation, take your micro-mobility mean of transportation like e-scooter or e-bike, and continue your journey in the city. Mobility points are different. Some of them are placed in the central parts of the city, and those are meant to support micro-mobility and e-mobility, but there are also mobility points which are park and ride mobility points placed in other parts of the city, where you can leave your private car near the city borders and go through the city with more sustainable, in a more sustainable way of commuting. So in Riga, we have developed so far a concept for the mobility points, with over 60 mobility points being placed in different parts of the city. And as I just explained, so those are different mobility points for different needs. But we have launched the very first mobility point in Riga last year, and actually it was a success. So because we have all of the sensors installed at that mobility point, we can tell, and we have very good statistics, how that improves that sustainable commuting in our city. So here at this mobility point, as you see, we have all kind of different smart technologies installed first ever in our city, like this smart bench where you can charge your devices, and as you see, it's fed by solar energy, and it has a lot of features and technologies installed in it. And continuing to this innovative urban environment testbed station, which is a real innovation. And the idea is here that in a close public-private collaboration, we have placed in our city the first urban environment testbed station, which has a lot of different sensors of testing urban environment and gathering data, which is stored in open data platform and used further for urban planning, because nowadays urban planning is not imaginable without having high quality, big open data. And that will be in the next slide as well. So here you can see one good sample how city can pilot different innovative sensors and other applications in the urban environment, and at the same time gather open urban data. Here is another experiment. So e-mobility is not only the mobility for the streets. So here you can see the sample how e-mobility can be introduced in one of the city hospitals. So those nice e-scooters, e-vehicles are used for transportation of patients who has difficulties to move, as well as for transportation of different, like small-scale medical appliances. And we had this experiment in one of our central city hospitals, and the results were really promising to think of setting up such vehicles at other hospitals of our city. And we went even further. So we didn't stop at the hospitals, but we also tried this experiment in one of the Riga graveyards in cemetery. So I see a lot of you are awakening and your eyes are now in a screen, but that's a real experiment which turned out to be a very successful. And this cemetery where this e-scooter still works and runs and performs its daily functions is still very thankful to us, to Riga Energy Agency, for trying this experiment out in this environment. So first of all, e-vehicle is very silent, so it's not disturbing the atmosphere of cemetery at all. It provides the social inclusion function, assisting people who have difficulties to move, to walk through those territories. So as graveyards are rather big in the size, and old people who are spending there quite a lot of time in taking care of the graves of their relatives, they really appreciate this. But okay, let's go further in our journey about the mobility. So this is the last success story what I wish to emphasize today. In the city of Riga, we have elaborated a strategy how to make all Riga city parking lots to look like that. Yeah, it probably looks like a dream, like a green oasis, but in a couple of years, we do believe that all the city parking lots will be using this pattern, as the pattern has been developed and approved by the Riga City Council to be used in the future in the newly developed park and ride lots and in other places. And here in the picture, you can see starting from construction phase to operational phase. So this is a question of the stormwater management, and I have heard the end of your last session, hearing your discussion on stormwater management, and yes, I do approve that the city of Riga works a lot on implementing sustainable stormwater and integrated stormwater management in our city, but this story is worth a separate presentation. So all what I want to say you that we have elaborated for our city a strategy, and we are now implementing this strategy, how to in different ways support this natural cycle of water in urban environment, and instead from discharging the stormwater through pipes to the water bodies, you can make stormwater from waste as you can transfer it into the urban resource. And this is a very good sample that here, I am not covering the technical details, but as you can see, all those layers. So there is a specific technology, how you develop those stormwater drainage systems so that they can, at the same time, to treat the stormwater, to get the pollutants out and retain it in urban environment instead of immediate transferring through pipes to the sewage system. And see, in the storm event, it works like that. It's a pleasant and beautiful urban environment, and it's stormwater management at the same time. So here are more inspiring pictures. And what is very important for you to understand that actually to build such a green and beautiful parking lot, you do not need to invest much. You take away just a little space from cars and turn it in green territories. Construction costs are about 30% lower. Yes, not higher, but lower, because you are not building these pipelines under the asphalt. However, the maintenance is a bit more expensive because you need to take care of those green plants, which are planted here. I'm happy to discuss this with you further. As I said, this question needs a separate presentation for about half an hour to tell you everything that Riga is doing in sustainable stormwater management. So here we've been actually very lucky that once we opened this specific parking lot near the Spitzekom shopping center, in 2 weeks we had one of the, I would say, 25-year storm events in Latvia, when in 24 hours we had like 52.9 millimeter of rain. Yeah, so that you can see in the picture. And the solution worked just perfectly. So there were no flood in that area. There used to be flood always on the neighboring streets because of the flat terrain of this place in the city. So I see that I'm having a very little time, but still a lot of things to tell to you. So I will go a little bit quicker through my projects. And as I said, I will leave you the presentation, so then you can read about our best practices yourself.
Nika, just jumping in, as you mentioned, the time is quite limited, and there are several questions also on the chat room. So you could think which project to point out, and then maybe we could use the rest of the time for the questions, and then people could look at the presentation later, if you don't mind. Yes. So
no, that's absolutely fine. So I think that there is one thing what I really prepared specially for you. So as I said, one of the most ambitious EU funding programs is the Horizon program, like nowadays known already as Horizon Europe for the next planning period. But this is the project on smart cities and communities, where Riga is one of the cities elaborating our bold city vision for 2050. And what is important about this project, it is that, as you can see, we are elaborating our strategy based on the Cities for Zero methodology, which is based in systemic thinking approach. So everything that you are learning in your summer school about systems thinking approach, believe me, this is what we urban planners are using in our daily activities. So this is the only way. If you look at the things, if you look at the climate in your city from the systems perspective, not as a single aspect, but you analyze how that system is interrelated. So this is the way how you can elaborate an integrated environmental policy for your city or for your country. So I'd like to stop here. You will find much more projects in my presentation and my contact details in the end. And I will put it in a chat in a second. So I'm open for the questions then. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick and Jan. And I see that there are several questions, and I think we could start with Olivia's question. So in the testbed station for air pollution sensor, do you monitor also other factors like PM10, PM2.5 or others?
Yes, thank you very much for this question. It's really a good question. So this particular testbed station is actually meant to test different new urban sensors, and whatever new comes up, whatever new is developed by our scientists, the city offers a space there at this test bed to test this sensor in urban environment. It is of extreme importance to test new equipment in real urban conditions. And again, in this testbed station, it's operating just for 1 year and a couple of days. As you saw in a presentation, we built it, so we opened it last year. And since the last July, in between, we had very harsh and cold Latvian winter, where the temperatures went down -25 degrees for a period of 2 weeks. And some of our urban sensors, like pedestrian and bicycle counting, which is able to count the pedestrians and the bicycles separate, just broke down. So first of all, they stopped transmitting this open urban data, and then they stopped counting as well. And so what we did, we explored the ways how to improve the heating of that equipment and how to make it working also in harsh Latvian winters. So answering your question, such sensors have not yet been designed by Latvian scientists, but as soon those sensors will be designed, they will be at our test bed station. As I said, it's open for everyone, and you can come, you have your pole with electricity connection, and you can test your equipment in real urban environment. Okay, thank you. I'm looking in a chat. Any more questions?
Yeah, there is one question. I will ask, jumping to Jingun question about when you are implementing the city green points, did you calculate the overall sustainability impact on the project? How can you make sure that the saved amount of emissions is larger than the amount of CO2 generated by the materials manufacturing that went into installation of benches and bikes and so on?
Mm-hmm. Okay, then you're speaking about the mobility points. So mobility points are not exactly the same as a green points, yeah? So we are also thinking of integrating green infrastructures in the future mobility points when these will be built, but that's another question. The question is really good, and honestly speaking, we haven't done much calculations when we installed our first mobility point. But as you see at this first mobility point, so electricity is produced by the solar panel, yeah, not for the test bed. The test bed needs very constant, this test bed for equipment needs a very constant electricity supply, so that comes from the city networks. Well, we've been putting the green procurement principles in the procurement, just the principles. It wasn't the whole green procurement, but we've been prioritizing sustainable materials. So that's why you see this wooden cover for the solar bench, yeah? And that's how we've been selecting the appropriate equipment. But your point is very good, and what I can promise from the city side, that for the next mobility point we will do a comprehensive evaluation of the impact of this mobility point on the urban environment. My guess is that those mobility points do still very good work for our city, because they do have potential to reduce the usage of private cars in the city, which is one of the main polluters of our urban environment. That's my answer.
I just wanted to add that so we have also a project URGE, where we are developing guidelines how to implement circular economy principles in municipality, and we are basically the organization in Riga municipality also doing this and working with this. So of course we see that these principles are very important also for us, but not in all projects we are able to practically calculate this life cycle of the investment or the pilot and these things. But of course, in this case, I think that it was more important to implement this station or this mobility point, and that there would be afterwards other mobility points as these, but in general, so we are also thinking how to calculate the other investments and looking on the buildings and other projects in the full life cycle.
Thank you. Then the question is about plants. So about the parking lots. So two things. Are those plants native species? And the other is, what are the positive impact of these parking lots and for Riga?
All right, so those parking lots are a part of our stormwater management strategy, which I tried to explain in brief, that we do believe that green infrastructures bring very positive impact in mitigating climate impacts in the city. So they use as basically the green infrastructures, they have a lot of benefits. So they cool down urban environment, so they reduce heat islands and so on, and etc. And about the plants, so we have done a separate study on that issue, and we do believe that you should only use local plants. That is the strategy due to many reasons: botanical, economical, sustainability, and others. And those plants are very carefully selected because the plants at the same time, so they need to be water resistant and they need to survive for rather long periods in dry conditions. So those are a kind of universal plants, but specifically selected. And we actually have, for the city of Riga, guidelines recently elaborated where all of those plants are listed, and about 80 species of different plants are proposed as plants that you use when you are constructing those green infrastructures in the city of Riga. And the green infrastructures you do not build only together with the mobility infrastructure. For the mobility infrastructure, as you saw from the pictures from one of those samples, you can, instead of building the pipelines network and taking the water away from urban environment, you can ensure that retention function and make this stormwater work for the city as source. So this is the main principle why we are doing it. Yeah? But you can also use those green infrastructures in many other different urban environments, in the courtyards, in city parks, in squares, on the rooftops of the building, as facades of the buildings. And there are many other uses, and they all serve for better stormwater management purposes and for better mitigation of climate impacts. Thank you.
So thank you, Nika. I see that there are more questions coming in, but I see that we are running out of time. So if participants agree, then and also Jānis and Nika agree, I could send you those questions and you could answer in written form. As we talked that also on Friday we have stakeholder activity, and if you could join for that as well, if anyone would be interested to talk to you. Yes, if we could agree on that.
Okay, yeah, if you send us the schedule, because yes, we have some guests in our office on Friday, but otherwise we are definitely available. Yeah.
Okay. Is there, from the participant side, is there any of the questions like burning and you would like to hear an answer now? And it makes sense at the moment from all what you've asked, or maybe something in mind you have at the moment. If not, then thank you very much. And yeah, none of the questions will be left away. As I said, I will send to Nika and Jānis. And also, yeah, I see that there are also discussions in the chat about plants and greening city and appreciation what you are doing as well. So thank you very much, Nika and Jānis, and thank you for all the questions what you've asked to the speakers. And now we will have 1.5 hour